Welcome to CC Writes. My name is CC Lepke, and today I am doing a writing challenge. I plan to do writing sprints like I normally do, the 25 minutes each with a short break in between. However, my goal today is that each writing sprint that I do, I'm planning to write one story for each one. So one short story for each writing sprint. And then I'm going to, for each of those stories, use a completely random genre and writing prompt in order to create the stories. So for that, I created this random story generator, which I'm very excited about. You spin the wheel and it will randomly choose the genre in this section, and then in this section it will be the writing prompt that I have to follow for my story. So everything that I'm writing, I don't have anything planned ahead of time. I have 25 minutes for each sprint to figure out what I'm writing and to get it out there as much as I can. And the first thing I got to do is choose my genre. Okay, so it's a tragedy with a meet cute. That's an interesting combination. Instead of trying to figure out all of the plotting and stuff while I'm doing it, to give myself a little bit more time for the writing, I think I'm going to take a 5-minute break and do the plotting for the next one. I think that's a good idea. So we'll do that. So it's a tragedy with a meet cute. I'm thinking, so there's this one story that I really love. It's one of my favorite Greek stories, and it's about Achilles during the Trojan War. So Achilles is fighting the battle. His lover has already died and he's already killed Hector. As he's fighting, the Amazon warriors come to help defend Troy against the Greek assault. In the middle of the battle, he ends up coming across the queen of the Amazons. They fight each other and then have this absolutely glorious battle. And right at the end, as Achilles is thrusting the knife into her body to kill her, he realizes that he's actually fallen in love with her. And so by his own hands, he has murdered the woman that he loves. And I think something along those ideas, where you have this like brief moment of absolute perfection where you believe that like this is your soulmate, and to have that instantly ripped away from you. I think that that is the very definition of what a tragedy should be. And I think that that's what I'm going to aim for in this particular short story. So the theme is actually going to be soulmates, and more specifically you know what, let me increase the size of this so you can see better. It'll be the instant loss of a grand love. So where do I want to set it? So in the Trojan story, it was on the battlefield, but I don't necessarily want to do a battle that leads to a loss like that. I could have it be on the bus or something like that, like a subway or something, where you have a very short amount of time to get to know people. And in that time, it's possible to make like a very deep connection if you're open to it. So it could be in a situation like that, a ride on an elevator, you know, all of the like traditional romantic sweet movies that happen. It could be something like that. However, those things can also be kind of cliche as well. And I don't want to fall too far into the cliche when I'm reaching for a story like this. What would be the sweetest way to meet someone? I'm thinking about when my husband and I first met each other. For months, my roommate had been talking about these two great guys that were at the dancing club that she went to. It was like a school club. We were all learning West Coast swing dancing there. And I had stopped going because I absolutely hated West Coast swing dancing at the time, because it's a really complicated dance and I don't do counting that easily. Like the beat for it was just more than I could handle. And so I had stopped going for a long time. And when I had stopped going, these two guys had started going to it. And so she would come home a couple of times a week just talking and talking and talking about these two awesome guys that were there. And she talked to them up so much that eventually I decided that I was going to have to meet them. So I went there, met the two guys very briefly, just kind of introduced to names. And one of the reasons I didn't like going there was because there were way too many girls and not enough guys there. So most of the time would just be me sitting on the sidelines because I was too shy to ask anyone to dance with me. And I remember the very first thing that my husband ever said to me was just him pointing and going like this. I don't know, there was something so confident about that, something so like alluring. I ended up immediately developing a crush on him. Yeah, and eventually we got married, so obviously that's our personal meet cute. So there are moments like that, like in everyday life, that you can come across somebody that you just instantly feel this connection to. Like, I want to spend every day with this person. And I want something along those lines, something simple, brief, but powerful for the characters in the story. So the places where people can typically meet each other, especially in adulthood, is at work, at, transitionary situations like at bus stops and subways, elevators. There are also clubs, bars, but it also needs to be a place where tragedy could potentially strike. So a car accident, the elevator falls, whatever. The scene would probably be, and I also need to know if the impact of it is that the person who they feel like might be their soulmate actually does something to try and protect them from what happens, because that's a pretty dark thing to happen as well. And I like dark things. Elevator might be cliche, but I think I'm gonna go with the elevator. And just for this story, it'll be a male and a female, maybe a couple of other passengers. So in a tragedy, the things that typically happen is you set up the situation of the world. It would also be good to set up a reason for how this could have been avoided as well. So like they could have taken the stairs, ended up taking the elevator instead, and then this tragedy happens. And do we want the male or the female to be the main character? I personally write better from a female perspective, but since this is practice, maybe I should do the male perspective. Yeah, let's do the male perspective. So we'll say he could take the stairs, but he sees a cute girl carrying things, follows her, asks if he can help, and follows her into the elevator. They start talking, immediately hit it off, and then right at the climax of their sort of love story, something needs to happen. I also need a little bit of foreshadowing because you can't go into it without the audience being aware. Like, it can't just end tragically out of nowhere, like a lightning bolt coming from the sky and, oh, they're dead. Like, that can't happen. So with a little bit of foreshadowing that can happen, I think they're going to hear loud noises on the upper levels. We'll say it's during a convention. I want at least 2 instances of foreshadowing, noises that they hear as the elevator goes up. And then from there, should it be instant attraction, or should there be a little bit of give and take there? Like maybe a small miscommunication that happens, but quickly wrapping it up. The story is only supposed to be like 2 or 3 pages at most. So like I want this to be flash fiction. So I can't go too in depth into the things that happen. That would make it really complicated and make the story a little too long. But still, I think it's better to have a little give and take there, because you do need like a little bit of the push and pull in the relationship for it to really come off as genuine, because I don't want it to be like the gushy love at first sight kind of thing. It definitely needs to have more of a grounded reality to it. So then once they get to the top, the doors start to open. He's already made his case and they obviously really like each other. They've agreed to go out. And as the doors open, they realize that the convention center is in absolute chaos. People are running in all directions. And there is somebody nearby who has a gun. Definitely a tragedy, a public tragedy that's happening on a more massive scale than what's just occurring in the elevator. But he's going to, I think he's going to shove the girl out of the way or jump in front of her as the person with the gun goes to shoot her, and then basically save her life. Okay, so that I think would be a successful flash fiction tragedy about a meet cute. So let's get started on that. So all that I have left is the main character makes an offhand comment that upsets the girl. He apologizes and shows that he's actually being really vulnerable with her. She ends up liking that and offers to go on a date with him and gives him her number. That all is probably going to happen within like 2 or 3 paragraphs. It doesn't really take much to get through that. And then the elevator doors are going to open, and that's when they'll see the gunman. And the story's going to end with him dying in her arms. So that's pretty cool. I got through quite a bit there. So that means I just need to go on to the next part of the writing sprint. So let's go ahead and generate the next story prompt. So we're doing literary fiction, and we're going to have a character who gets tempted by cheating and they give in to it. I'm not gonna lie, I was kind of hoping I wouldn't have to do this kind of story because I have a really hard time getting into the heads of people who would cheat. It does not come naturally to me to think in that way. I am a very faithful person. As I'm thinking this through, one of the things that comes to mind is that there are a couple of different types of cheaters that are portrayed in stories. You have the cheaters who cheat because the relationship is bad, people who cheat because they are a bad person and are a serial cheater. And then you have characters who normally you wouldn't expect to cheat, but they end up in a situation. It's like the grass is greener type of situation where they see only the positives of this new relationship, and it sort of takes away from the positives of another relationship. So as far as theme is concerned with this, which one do I think would be the best, most interesting type to write? For literary fiction, it's very heavy, very dramatic, so I think I want someone in a committed relationship who doesn't expect to cheat, getting swept away by their emotions. As far as the scene itself is concerned, this could happen in workplaces, it could happen in friend groups. Maybe the person has to go away for work and their partner had decided not to go. So we'll put it at a hotel. During a work trip, they meet a stranger, not somebody that they work with. I did a male last time, so I'll do a woman this time. Maybe they both work in the same industry. It could be like a gala or something, like where everybody's dressed up fancy, and she would probably be lonely there without her husband. So the beats that I'm going with is it'll start off with the woman on the phone with her husband, and that'll give the setup of the event and the relationship that they have, where it is a loving relationship, but she's upset that he's not there with her in this important moment in her life. She goes to her table, there's an attractive man that flirts with her. They end up dancing and she starts flirting back with him. He will ask her to go back to her room and she'll resist at first, try to call her husband, but the husband doesn't answer. The stranger is going to persist and she'll give in. They go back to her room. After they're done cheating, she'll go to let him out, where she'll find flowers sitting in front of her door with a note from her husband. And that will spark this feeling of insane regret of like, what did I just do? I think that'll be a nice, interesting story to go with as far as a literary basis is concerned. So let's get started. Hopefully I can fit it all in 25 minutes. So I didn't end up finishing any of my stories this time, but I did get a good way into each of them. But I'm really proud of the work that I put in and the stories that I was able to get out of this practice. That's all I have for you today, but thank you so much for joining me today on CC Writes. I really hope you enjoyed our time together, and I will see you later.